Building and assembling assets with Solaris and Seneferu. This is what we are going to focus on this session. The first thing we will do is that we will open our Seneferu Production Manager, and as usual we will log into our account. You will see a list of all the tasks from all the projects that you are working on. If you are working on just one project, so you can just switch to this project, so you can see only the tasks related to the project that you are working on. Then what you are going to do, in case, even if you are on this case, notice that each project has its own application and plugins versions that is configured for it, so you need to run your applications from a terminal that is configured for that particular project. So if I'm working on this task, I will open a terminal that is configured for the project that this task belongs to. Then I will open Houdini. In this case, I set this to Solaris because I want to work on this task in Solaris. Actually, I will work on this task, not this, but anyway, it's the same terminal, and I will work on it in Solaris. I will open Houdini. Okay, and now I will set my task to in progress. This will show you all the dependencies you need to work on this task. What I will do, I will set the task to in progress, and I will click on load dependencies. What the load dependencies will do, it will build for you a recipe that has your character. You can now start configuring. If you look at the graph here, you will notice that the system has built for you a proper hierarchy of the scene that has everything you need, and will load for you all the dependencies you need: the camera rig, any turntable, testing environment where you need to test, where you can test this asset, or whatever is planned as dependencies for this job. Now, what you can do, for example, you can start configuring asset variants. You can do whatever. You can switch between the asset to different assets, so you can switch between different assets and do things or compare between the assets. You can render them and see what are, maybe you can switch to any character. And notice that when I do this, if parts of the asset isn't there, for example, when I switch to man head, there is no closed simulation test, and there is no closed simulation test, but only the model will be there. This is a static model actually. But if I switch again to this character, you will notice that this character already have the closed simulation test and the anim clip test that this closed simulation was done with. If there is here published for this simulation, it will also come as dependency here automatically. And notice that anything that doesn't exist, it will just be ignored silently. For example, if I switch to this guy, it has also animation and cloth, but if it doesn't have animation or cloth, like in this case, then the non-existing assets will silently disappear. And then you can work on your task, do whatever you want, but in this case I'm working on this asset, so I will just go to this, or you can click on this again and this will reset the scene graph variables to the proper values. Notice also that you can't just switch between the assets, but you can also switch between the different versions of the assets. So for example, you can query the version of this, or you can query the version of this. It's animation test version 2. You can set it, for example, to version 1 or to the current floor approved version. By using use versionless. Versionless means the current approved version. The current approved version, or actually the latest version if this asset has never been approved before. Because this is an asset-based task that doesn't have a frame range, you can set this to whatever you want, because Seneferu will just set it to the default values. If this animation maybe have 120, yeah, so it's just a testing that you can test with this any CFX hair simulation, cloth simulation. You need to make sure that all your setups are working as expected, the model is deforming as expected, everything is working fine, to validate this asset before you move forward with passing this asset to the shots. This is what the validate asset is for. Actually, I'm not here in Solaris to validate the asset, but it's something just I'm explaining it for you to know. But usually if you are in Solaris in building an asset or assembling assets, then you will be working on a task like scene assembly or set assembly, or a modeling task where you can load the dependencies for a model, assemble them, creating variants and stuff like that. Then at the end of the graph you can create a USD ROP, call it whatever. Actually, you don't need to worry about the location or what do you name it or anything. Just when you publish, Seneferu will take care of everything, but the most important part here is the extension of the file. This is what we need from you when you place a node like this. Then Seneferu will take care of everything else for you, and we'll take it, we'll write the cache, we'll publish it, we'll give it a version, and we'll publish it to the project database, and we'll fix the path in your recipe before publishing the recipe itself. It will do for you all the needful. So you as an artist, you don't need to bother yourself about all these technical stuff and technical details. You just focus on what you are doing, work on your task, do whatever you have to do in the application as you know how to do it, and let the rest for Seneferu. Now, if you are ready to go, you can just click on publish, and this will write out the USD and publish the task. But of course, I will not do this because this is not actually a task that should publish something like this. Notice that when we clicked on validate asset, the lighting template or the project lighting template was coming as dependency to the task. This means that if you already have a proper lighting template published out of Solaris that have your assets configured and the shaders and textures resolved automatically in render time, then when this comes as dependency for your task, you will be able to render and compare the assets to them each others and validate the look of the asset, the deformation, the validation of the body deformation, the clothes simulation, the hair simulation, the look and feel of the asset in comparison to the neighboring assets that will be around it, and the same color levels, and yeah, everything. You can just validate the asset from all perspectives by switching between the different assets and rendering and seeing stuff until you publish this and publish some maybe turntables and or preview images or play blasts that showing that this asset is finally what we want, so we can check it out and approve it and approve all what built this asset before we proceed with animating and simulating for the final shots.